If a Christian can be thrown off, if they can be emotionally compromised by the activities of men, they're certainly not going to withstand some of the things that they'll begin to experience, though God was quite clear in the Bible. And again, man, we have a habit of translating things that fits our immediate environment for the sake of believability. Unfortunately, that's not how our Father reacts. For example, the flood. Can you imagine those guys in the time of the flood? When Noah said a flood is coming, can you imagine what the feedback was of his own family, of those around him, saying, what is he talking about? A flood? What is that? Because it was so far outside of what everybody else suspected. It's almost like even the arrival of Christ. When he came, they did not know it was him. That still astounds me to this day. How can so many biblical experts miss the fact that the Son of the living God came to earth and looked at him face to face and did not notice him? I'll tell you why. Because they believed in their own paradigm, their own writings, their own conclusions, and that's very dangerous. You know, you can only believe in your own ending if you're prideful. You cannot do that with humility. When a Christian must remain flexible and receiving of revelation. Because if you lock your mind to one ending, to one result, you're going to miss the truth. In every case, that will happen. You know, there are several places in the Bible, given the end times, that the Lord said, everybody's going to be wrong. That bothers me a lot, which is why I'll never say I'm going to be right. I can't stick to my own ideas. You know, I'm working with a human mind here. We draw upon experiences and what we're exposed to in our environment, other people's opinions, and so on and so forth. And all of that mixed together gives us some type of conclusion, but that's not revelation. Revelation is absolute. Revelation is unmovable. It is perfect because it happens just as it was told. And if we go adding our 2 cents into everything, we're going to change the ending. Thus, people are not going to be prepared. They're going to be looking for one thing and something else is going to take place. Right now, people are starting to steady themselves because conventionally they're looking for war. They're going to have a war, yes, but what they're going to contend with is going to be worse than any war could ever be, and that is the spiritual manifestation of things. It's not going to be a fun time. It will assault your senses like you never thought possible, and people are, frankly, they're just not ready because they're still taken aback by human interactions. People believe in their own interpretations of things, and that is dangerous. Be open for God's revelation, because I know for a fact that when the Lord begins to reveal things, it is so different from what you thought. It's a lot throwing people off, and if we're not open to God's revelation, it's just not going to end well. The Lord said about his people being destroyed for a lack of knowledge. That's a bad term. You know, suffering is one thing. Being destroyed, that's something different. Most of you have heard the verse, you've heard people say, my people suffer from a lack of knowledge, right? When you start speaking about the word destroyed, it changes everything. It's more intense than suffer. Suffering you can recover from. You cannot recover if you are absolutely destroyed. And when God said his people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge, that's not good. So in essence, God's people, nowhere else in the Bible does it speak about how God's people can be destroyed, except for that one place. That one place tells us how we can be ousted. And for the most part, people are doing exactly what the Bible said not to do, what the Father said not to do. So we're going to talk about the reality of the conditions to come. So none of us are under some illusion that somehow we're going to have the good old days back again. No, these are going to be desperate days as far as men's decisions, what a person must do. Now, can they be good for those who are washed by the blood? Here's what the Lord said. The Lord said the world's going to have a rough time, but for his elect, if they stay their minds upon Christ, he'll always intercede, and though they will see those things, they will not perish by those things. A lot of people don't want to see anything. It's too late. You've seen a lot of it already. And so in order to be truly prepared, we cannot limit ourselves to our own knowledge. And the Lord he's constantly trying to tell us, to inform us what he's about to do. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Priest means servant. Thou shalt be no servant to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. Now, I want to stay here for a second, because this is not one of those passive things you read and just skip off to something else. He's talking about the destruction of his own people. He said, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. Now, let me ask you this. How in the world can a person reject knowledge in this day? And what knowledge is he talking about? He qualifies it. He said, because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. So obviously, the knowledge is not just, any knowledge. It's the Father's knowledge, what he has given us, not what we interpret. Because the Lord can give me something and I can absolutely just mess it up. I'm going to read the whole thing down to this part so you get a good context. It says, hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. That's how he starts this out. There's no truth, no mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. Let me tell you what's happening with mankind. To have knowledge of God is not just to know about it. It's almost like a son having knowledge of his father. That is intimate knowledge. Knowledge that only that son can have because he lives with that father. Not public knowledge, but intimate knowledge. A child can say, oh, my dad wouldn't like that. But then they can also say, my dad would like that. So this is intimate knowledge, not public knowledge. He says, by swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out and blood toucheth blood. Listen, because there is no truth nor mercy. That word mercy you're going to hear over and over and over again as one of the attributes of the living God, which he said for fact. God said for a fact that men leave off mercy a lot. He told the Pharisees, he said, you left off mercy. You kept everything else, but you left off mercy. He wasn't pleased with that because God called himself merciful. He said, I am merciful. If you're not merciful, what are you? Anybody know what the opposite of being merciful is? Vengeful. Mercy is when you grant or you extend kindness, love, patience to a person who does not deserve it. So then the opposite of that is to withhold everything and to execute judgment upon an individual. In which case God said, judgment is mine. That judgment is his, which is revenge. He will repay, saith the Lord. That was his issue with Pharisees. They were so happy to punish someone for their infractions. And for the most part, the world is exactly like that. The world, you can be nice all the days of your life, do the right thing all the days of your life. You do one thing wrong, and they will crucify you. You do one thing wrong, they'll turn your life upside down. They will discount every good thing you do. I know that one by heart because I'm the opposite. A person can do me wrong every day of their lives. The moment they do something good, I'll celebrate that moment. I will not focus upon a person's iniquity because all of us have iniquity and we have a merciful Father. Even Pharaoh converted. Did you know that? See, stories, Egyptians were historians. They wrote down everything. You know what's in their books? How Pharaoh went off and sought peace the rest of his days. Do you know that? Pharaoh did this. The same Pharaoh that pursued the Israelites. He sought peace the rest of his days. He saw there was only one true God. He cast away all this other stuff. He knew at that moment he had made a grave mistake, and so did mankind. And even he tried to warn people, but the people who came after him did not listen. And just like today, they won't listen. They think they have it right. They think their governments are right and how they rule is right. And you seldom ever hear that word mercy. You seldom hear about forgiveness. You know why? Because you can't talk about forgiveness when you're cultivating an atmosphere of violence. And violence is what's touching one another, touching people on this earth. It's breaking out just like God said it would. Iniquity is coming up to its full. Be careful not to fall into it. There are too many Christians falling in to these ideologies of divisiveness of all times in history. This is a time to turn back to the living God, to practice mercy by way of the heart. I'm not talking about speaking mercy. That's useless. To have it in your heart is the truth of you. It's just like if you were to approach a person, you hated that person, and you just suppressed it. I'm telling you now, a time is coming you will not be able to suppress your own hatred. So you might want to purge it. To suppress it is not the way. To purge it is the way. Jesus gave a command, and you know what he said? Purge yourselves. Get ready for his return. Purge yourselves. Because if you're not purged, you're not ready for him. You probably won't go with him. To have something in your heart is the truth of you. To suppress something is no good. And do you know how many Christians have honestly suppressed things? It comes out from time to, listen, it does not matter how it comes out. Normally people pick a target and their frustration is directed towards that target. That is the wrong way. People venting? Venting is nothing more than exercising one's hatred and violence. Hopefully you guys have an understanding of how society is constructed and why people are so drawn to activities like football, basketball and these things. Do you truly understand what's going on here? That's a release for people's violence, hatred, and everything else. They figured this out a long time ago. In Rome, they would hold the games. They would have gladiators, people chopping each other up, people being fed to the lions. But why would they do that? Because the people demanded it. The people had to have a release, or they would begin to become violent one to another. And do you know what happened during this lockdown of COVID-19? Abuse went skyrocketed. Do you know why? No one had a release. Do you know what happened as soon as football came back? The violence dropped down to near zero. What are the odds? It's very fulfilling when your flesh can relieve itself by seeing someone kill another, or hurt another, or defeat another. It's all the same thing. All of a sudden you feel okay because you had your weekly fill of fighting. Bloodlusts. I remember one time I used to play football, but I never really liked to watch it. I didn't like to watch it because I wanted to be right dead in the middle of it. And every time when I did watch it, sometimes briefly, I would get overly engaged, calling for the other team to just squash the other team is basically what people do. But one day I noticed, I said, what am I doing? Because it was causing me to have an aggressive nature. And I caught that. I said, no. So you know what I did? I stopped watching all sports. And when I stopped watching all sports, I noticed something within myself, withdrawal symptoms. It's so funny too, because when the sports were cut out, I found myself reading stories or being attracted to things that were just like football, basketball, and these other sports, boxing, whatever the case is. They would draw you to violence anyway, and you would begin to root for one side or the other, calling for the blood of the other side. That truly is a bloodlust. And getting rid of one thing, you'll quickly replace it by another. And so I said, wait a minute, I can't do that either. Lord, what is this? And the Lord began to show me what was truly in the flesh. And if you think it's weak and easily defeated, you're mistaken. How many of you read Facebook or social media, but you're reading the conversations, the arguments of others? You don't have to answer that out loud. Just think about it. How many times do you look at your television or your computer and you find yourself drawn to something where somebody defeats somebody else? How many times were you internally vindicated because your favorite political side won and the other side lost? And how many times were you angered because the opposite side won and you lost? It's the same thing, whether you're talking about politics, football, basketball, kickboxing, boxing, whatever the case is. It's the same lust, and it must be purged, because if it's not that, it'll turn into other abominable lusts. It's the same thing. Listen, competition was developed thousands of years ago as an element to keep people engaged in society. Because every time somebody wins, another person wants to join the winner. Somebody must lose, and it causes them to fight harder. And you know what they get out of people shredding each other to pieces? They get the best that flesh can offer. Do you know this? Why do you think they have capitalism? Because it produces the best of the best. It causes, they promote this competitive atmosphere for that very reason. When a business creates something and they have defeated all the rest, that's when they get that offer. That's when their product all of a sudden gets put in everybody's homes. That's when the government embraces it. But then they go and take the guy, the designer, and they utilize him for other things. The reward is money. The reward is to live like a king. They want the best of the best, and the only way they can have that come out is to force the best product out of people, to cause people to kill each other, to produce the best thing. What do they turn around and do with this stuff? They make weapons with it and kill each other anyway. You can't escape the lusts of the flesh on this earth. You can purge yourselves of it. You can truly be of the kingdom, not partaking in those things. Because I'll tell you, even right now, I can't stand competition. I can identify a movie where somebody must lose. I can automatically see the ending. I can see situations the same way. I know it's driven by competition. You know what the world says? That's healthy. Yes, healthy for flesh. But we're here to overcome the flesh through Christ Jesus. We don't operate by the lusts or desires of the flesh, but we operate by the truth and righteousness of the Spirit. But I ask you this, what are we feeding ourselves? Because you can make your flesh hungry. Do you not know that even in religious settings, you know what causes one religion to get mad at another, or one church to get mad at another? It's competition. That's all it is. Competition. Listen, if somebody else started a ministry and all of a sudden they got a lot of you guys start going to that ministry, why in the world would I get jealous? If it's for the Lord, wouldn't I rather say, oh yes, let's send some more his way? because it's for the kingdom and it's for the people. So a person who's for the kingdom would never get upset, but they would in fact lift up the other person. We think of 1,000 excuses to gain everything we can. Folks, revelation is not calculating and ending. Revelation is truth from on high. It's bound in pureness. It is never incorrect. And if we wait upon God's revelation, you will not come up short. See, the Bible also says, Christ is able to keep you from falling. Thank you, Lord. You don't have to fall another day in your life, but that can only be done through Christ, who is able to keep you from falling. And that is through Christ from our Father, not through a man, not through teachings, not through any of those things. Because those folks in the times of old who heard one message and were filled with the Holy Spirit because they believed, they didn't go to school. The same thing happens today. It's just that if somebody ever told you that, you would say they're crazy. So no one talks about those things. My goodness. In the time of the Exodus, something came to this earth. The descriptions are clear. It was solid, transparent, not solid, and it was under orders. See, that's hard for people to believe. That's almost like talking about angels. That word angel means messenger. The Vatican has a device. The U.S. or the world international communities have another device. And the Vatican's device is maintained by a global community, by all governments. So with these other devices, they work hand in hand. It is said that a person cannot look upon that object. They have to indirectly view the object. If they look at the object, they'll likely die of fright. So I'm going to ask you something. How can you look at a star or something that looks like the sun and die of fright? Now, that seems outlandish. That seems wild, right? It does. It seems that can never happen. That's crazy. That's nuts. Then why would you have a telescope that's kept in secret? Whatever they find is kept in secret for so long. I guarantee you it's not because they've seen life on other worlds. No one cares about that. That everybody's already prone to accept that to a degree. But if they were able to see something that was so far outside of what people expected, well, then you would have an issue. For example, I'm going to talk about some of the conditions that you'll see on this earth very soon. I can't even stress that enough. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's almost like there's nothing I can say to get a person to see a very simple truth, because sometimes we get so prideful in certain subjects, and we're drawn by a long conversation with a bunch of data points. We're drawn by evidence, and it's very difficult to go through that. So people like me who have an involvement in specific things try to bring up certain conversations that are weird, but they eventually take place. But they're weird. They're outside of the norm. They're what nobody else was calling for. A person like myself will do that on purpose to let you know that there's elements that you're going to have to deal with that no one can calculate. The timing is always going to be wrong because God is commanding quite a few things, yes, but He's also given us something called a season. And in that season, if He prophesied things would take place and happen, then they're going to take place and happen. And if He told us in that season how to be shielded directly by Him, we would be foolish not to heed that advice. And when you know what He did, it begins with meekness. But that word is seldom qualified in a conversation. It's sustained by humility. But even that word is lost in the language that we now have today. It's solidified by the blood of the Lamb. And the blood of the Lamb covers those who truly accept the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. If you accept the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, which is that you admit that you were a sinner, that you have broken all the commandments, you admit that you were involved in things you should have been involved in, and you desire to be washed or cleansed from all the wrongdoing, and you repent, which means you have turned away from seeking to do those things. Because if you don't turn away from it, you never repent it. You just ask for forgiveness. If you ask for forgiveness, that is not repentance. Repentance is turning away from sin. Forgiveness is realizing you messed up and you want the Lord to forgive you. But turning away leads you to salvation. God is just to forgive, not hold you accountable for things you ask Him forgiveness for. That's called mercy. That's why He's just to forgive. But if we don't repent, we're not going with Him, nor are we washed by the blood. No one is washed by the blood until they repent, because you cannot accept what Jesus did on the cross unless you're ready to turn away from your sin. All too often, though, we don't know the difference between a repentant heart and a strategy of forgiveness. For example, suppose you have an issue or a problem, and sometimes people want that issue or problem to be resolved or go away. And so we learned that if you ask for forgiveness, you're brand new again, you're clean, you can be forgiven. And with that, we try to be in right standing with the Lord, maintain that right standing, correct? And it's very difficult, isn't it? Because you're fighting off certain habits and certain things you normally do, and sometimes you feel like you're not qualified, or you're sitting on the outside of the process of the living God, like you're trying but you're not sure if it's sticking or not, if it's productive. There's a difference between asking for forgiveness and having a repentant heart. So let me explain this to you briefly, because personally I would like many of you to try this again, but to understand something first. And this is not to intrude in your lives or to be judgmental about anything. It is simply another way of thinking about a forgiveness in the context of what Jesus gave us, and personally as he's given it to me. Because there was a time when I would look around in the world and see nothing but darkness. I wanted nothing to do with the world. It was too dark, too violent, and everything else. But at the same time, I noticed within myself things that would manifest often that had no business manifesting. Things I would do, certain things in life, they have to change. And so one day I did ask for forgiveness. And I said, okay, this is going to be a brand new thing here. Lord, forgive me for this. And I had a list of forgiving things I need to be forgiven for. And at the end of that prayer, that petition, I said, okay, I'm clean. And then during that time, a soldier walks in. And when he walked in, let's just say he was substandard, which kindled something in me. And he said something out of the way. And so I responded in this habitual response or a responsive habit in the armed services, which was not conducive of a Christian at all, right? So when I did that, I said, I got mad at that guy. I said, well, I just asked for forgiveness. And when you know it, a knucklehead walks in and it causes me, right? Now analyze what I'm saying. I said, this guy walks in and causes me to stumble, to say something I didn't want to say. Now we're going to ask for forgiveness again. It felt like everything was undone. Later on that same day, the Lord taught me a big lesson. He showed me what a repentant heart was. And he showed me what asking for forgiveness is, and then trying to maintain righteousness somehow, how that doesn't work. Anybody ever do that? You ask for forgiveness. It's not 10 minutes. You engage a person and you said something or did something you weren't supposed to do because you were confronted by a person almost instantly, and all of what you were asking for forgiveness for went out the window. Anybody ever do that? What the Lord taught me is to have a repentant heart is the goal here. Not just to ask for forgiveness, because you do that 1,000 times a day and go right back into the same dirt you came out of. When you ask for forgiveness, all of a sudden you're trying to maintain the status quo of salvation with the Lord, and that doesn't work out too well, because then you forcefully end up putting people out of your life. You dodge people and everything else. You start limiting yourself with interaction, and we forget that we're made as lights to be put in the darkness. So that doesn't work. You don't run away from darkness. You shine a light on it. You don't run away. And for the most part, a person who asks for forgiveness and then they try to maintain righteousness, what they end up doing is taking everything in their lives that can cause them to stumble, or every person, and they start pushing people away. They start becoming a recluse. They get away from everything. That's the only way they can maintain righteousness. That is not what the Lord put you here for. For example, Jesus walked in, you might as well say a bar, where tax collectors and whoremongers and everything else was in there. And he was talking to them. And they said, well, look at your rabbi. And what's he doing in there? He's eating and drinking with the drunkards. But where he was found was very significant. Now, Jesus was not moved by that. But why? He showed me why. See, because I thought about that and I said, wait, Lord, this way I'm doing it is the way that was taught to me. Ask for forgiveness and then try to maintain righteousness somehow and you'll be good to go. I said, that's not working for me. And I already told you guys, I'm like a kid on Christmas. If the toy has no batteries, I'm going to let you know that what is this? This is nothing without the batteries. What is this? When the Lord taught me about a repentant heart, however, everything was altered. It's so funny, too, because I tried so hard to be righteous on my own. It did not work. I'm just telling you right now, it didn't work. It's not that I was a bad guy. It's that the small things would get me. For example, you're walking through your house in the middle of the night. You stub your toe. If any iniquity is in your language, it's coming out right there when you stub that little bitty tiny toe with a lot of oofs. It'll come out in a heartbeat. You may get startled by something. If something's coming out that's not right. So that way it never worked. So let's talk about a repentant heart. As I continued out through that day, going into other days, I began to see things on a deeper level. It's almost like the Lord opened my eyes. And what I saw was so different from what I initially saw that my heart began to change based upon what I saw. See, at first, I saw nothing but darkness in the world. And I wanted that darkness to go away, and I didn't want to be a part of that darkness. So I did like everybody else did. I started to separate myself from the darkness. But then I would read over and over again, where the Lord said, I send you as sheep among wolves. That began to change things. Of all things in my life, there's never a time when I doubted Christ. I knew he was the Christ. I knew that God was God. I knew what their standard was. I knew I couldn't keep those standards by myself. And so the Lord opened my eyes. And when he showed me the world again, that's when he began to show me the people that were stuck in iniquity like it was glue or a fly trap. They could have gotten out with the right movement, but because they could not see, they struggled. At that moment, I could see how destructive sin was on any level, how it leads up to the killing of an individual, how consuming it is. And at that moment, I thought about Christ. And I said, Lord, I've been giving you nothing but excuses. My prayers have been excuses. My prayers have been an attempt for you to excuse my behavior while I chose to keep it. And when I saw what sin really was and the damage it really does, listen, not through the unrighteous, but through the righteous, is even hurtful to talk about, because when you see it, it's very damaging. But the Lord opened my eyes and he showed me how easy somebody can be damaged by those who represent Christ. How easily children can be damaged by those who push them to the side while they get on with the business, they say, of the Lord. How the righteous lift up the righteous, but point fingers at the unrighteous. He showed me these things. And at that moment when I saw too much, my desire for sin left. That's what happened. When I saw the damage and the penalty that the innocent pay for the sin that would operate through me, it sickened me. It sickened me and me. I got sick of myself, no longer justifying myself, no longer saying, Lord, I can't do this by myself, this, and I no longer said that, because a repentant heart developed in me, which is this. When you get sick of the sin because you see the destruction and what it really does, you lose your desire to be a part of sin, period. And when you lose that desire, when you lose that desire to stand out in view of men, when you lose that desire to be number one or the first one, to have this and to have that and all this competitive nonsense, when you lose that desire to play a role in the world's systems, which do nothing but kill men while they're on their feet, when you lose that desire, you're not trying to make a name for yourself anymore. And your desire is not to engage in sinful practices anymore. That's when it's so easy to overcome sin, because with that repentant heart is a loss of a desire to sin in the first place. When you lose that desire, that's when you turn away. That's when you lost your taste for going back to that sinful life, and that's when the change comes. That's a repentant heart. A repentant heart is one that is not making excuses for the sin, but loses its desire to be a part of it. When you have a repentant heart, you have a desire for Christ, but no desire for sin. See, when you lose your desire or your taste for sin, sin can walk right up to you in your face. You'll turn away from it. It's almost like a pregnant woman. You pregnant women know about this. When you get sick of a food during pregnancy, you're just not going to touch it again. Even the smell of it's going to make you sick. So it's much like that with sin. When sin comes, you're so sickened by it, you just turn away. You don't care if it's there or not. You're not going to partake of it. It can no longer tempt you, and that is the key. Once you have a repentant heart, you cannot be tempted in that thing again. A repentant heart comes when you see the truth of sin. You know in the Bible when it says the wages of sin is death? It's bad when you see the innocent hurt because of sin, the sin that we so easily give ourselves a pass on. A repentant heart is very different than our first notion of asking for forgiveness and trying to maintain some standard of religion. No. A repentant heart never brags. It does not want to be a part of sin anymore. It turns away as Lot turned away from Sodom and Gomorrah, and it never looks back because it has no desire. Lot's wife was tempted to look back. Why? Because she did not develop that repentant heart. A repentant heart is one that will have no desire for sin, and thus you turn away from it. You're not going to go back to it again. You have no desire for it. See, most people have tried this 1,000 ways. They really have. And for the most part, they ask for forgiveness, and then they try to forcefully maintain some type of righteousness by moving the elements of life. You don't have to do that. It's time for God's children to see sin for what it is, and it is the Father that opens the eyes of you and me. See, I didn't do this by myself. What happened was I admitted, but I could not maintain this vicious cycle of asking for forgiveness and sinning again. That element, once I noticed that element, I said, Lord, I can't do this. I can't even maintain righteousness. That's when he began to open my eye. When I saw what it really did, when I saw sin, how it affects everything and interacts all the time, how it can be found, how it grows from the smallest conversation or the smallest emotion. I wanted no part of it. I lost my desire for it. And when I lost my desire for it, because in fact, when I saw the sin, the purpose of Christ became that much more important. The cross became everything. See, those are the days when I stopped asking for things for me. My desire now rests with my fellow man, not with me. You guys know my term. I always say I know who I am. And what that means is I know I'm undeserving. My life is not about me. My life is about everybody but me. And if you don't understand that, suppose you're a father or a mother and you have children. Young parents often try to put the kid to sleep so they can go do what they want to do. As they get older, they realize something. Hey, my life has now become the nurture of these children. And so what they do is they throw their life away and they sow everything into the child. That's what they do. So they're not trying to put them to sleep. They're training them up in the way they should go. When that takes place, that child is truly nurtured. When a parent seeks to have their child go much further than they went, that child is truly nurtured. But when a parent is thinking of themselves and trying to put the kid to sleep so they can go do what they want to do, the child is going to be missing elements. And it happens that way. That's the difference between a mature parent and an immature parent, or a parent that just doesn't know these things. Once a repentant heart is developed, the Lord will continue to open your eyes as you're able to handle it, stage by stage, never all at once. All at once would destroy you. Stage by stage makes the cross that much more important until the day comes when everything is the cross to you, when that act at the cross means so much to you. But nothing that will manifest in your life is discouraging. That's what happens. And again, it's not something we do. We initialize it through an acknowledgement of our shortcomings. Because even in doing that, as being honest, sometimes we cover up for our own inabilities to do things. But when we're open with the Lord, totally open with the Lord, things start happening. God is a God of truth. If we approach him in truth, we approach him. But if we approach him with a half-truth and we know what we do, right? Not disclosing all, still trying to act like we have it under control, trying to act our way to the throne, meaning we try to emulate somebody else to approach the throne, that's disingenuous. That doesn't work. When you are 100% yourself, wide open to the Lord, ready, and you can see that cross, he will enhance your vision as far as righteousness goes, to see the truth. And upon seeing that truth, it is heaviness, and you will lose all desire for sin. So much so, the same things you did an hour before, no one can ever tempt you into doing again. See, the Lord said, and the Bible teaches, that a man is drawn away and tempted of his own lusts. So what you desire inside is what you're going to fall prey to. Do you guys hear that? What you desire inside is what you have fallen prey to. That's exactly what Satan uses to hook you, is what you desire inside. When you have a repentant heart, your desires change. They're not the same anymore. Thus, you can no longer be tempted. That's the difference. Now you guys have it. Hopefully you can employ it. Because I tell you, the differences are stark when compared to our approach. That often leaves a person bitter. A lot of people know they have that there's a bitterness connected to their lives in some way, some situation in the past or something like that. That root of bitterness is a cancer to you. To rid yourselves of that is to call upon the name of the Lord in truth by being open and honest with him 100%. Disclose everything. He already knows. But if he already knows and we cover it up, we're not approaching him in truth, are we? Please think about that. If the Lord already knows, but we still do not want to disclose it to the living God through prayers by way of Christ, we're not approaching him in truth. See, the Bible, even our worship sometimes can be disingenuous because we can act like we're thankful for something when we just complained about it the hour before. If it states in the Bible that God is spirit, therefore we must worship him in spirit and in truth. And if the Lord said, don't pray, don't think you're going to be heard for your many words, but say your prayer in secret. If the Lord said that, then this is a genuineness he's talking about. Disclosing by way of truth everything about yourself in the privacy of your own home. In your secret place means deep within yourself. In the place nobody else can touch, disclose everything. Never try to act like somebody else, but disclose everything. When you do that, you'll notice pride right away. Anything we defend of ourselves is done by pride. Why do I say that? Because if Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, then he defends us as we enter into his servitude. But he is our defense. We're not our own shield. He is our shield. You guys see the difference? That change of heart is when he changed our stony heart. A stony heart is a heart unwilling to change. The heart that says, I already know how to do it. Nobody can advise me in this. When you change from that heart to that flesh heart, a flesh heart is a heart that's able to change. And the Lord gives you that. A stony heart, to keep a stony heart, you must agree not to change. To agree not to change means we can become so stubborn and prideful, we'll say, nobody can teach me anything, I already have it right. That's why at the onset of COT, I said one thing, I will always remain teachable. If the day comes when I'm no longer teachable, I've slipped a long way off the path of righteousness. That means I can hear anyone, but everything goes through Christ Jesus. The Lord takes care of judgment and everything else. The big stuff. He didn't call me to judge anything. He called me for something else. But I want you to notice not only that, but how that he uses us in our days of iniquity for other things. Because a lot of people ask, well, if God's children are forgiving all the time, then how is there going to be any justice in the world? God has set up people for justice. Just as he used Pharaoh, just as he used King Nebuchadnezzar. And these were not holy men. These were unholy men. Just as he used them in the capacity of judges to pass judgment upon a person, and he would touch their hearts to do specific things, he has also done the same in the world. So if you ever meet a judge that is very cruel, very harsh, your Father's involved in that judge when it comes to you. He already said that. Even though they're not in the realm of God's righteousness as you can see it, they're still being used. You have to understand that. He has already set up elements. He's given them a heart. For those who are called to defend this nation, he's given them a heart. See, they haven't been called to a fullness of servitude yet. And in that time when they have not been called to a fullness of servitude, they're out there fighting so that you can still have your freedoms to learn about the word of the Lord. Because the day democracy leaves is the day the Bible leaves. Do you know that? So they're out there fighting so that you can still have relative peace to continue to read the word on your own, to access information on the internet you wouldn't otherwise ever see. There is nothing held back from the saints right now. Nothing. The problem is too much freedom. So much freedom that we start to complain about small things. It's the old adage. If a person who is full goes into a restaurant, they're going to be handed a menu and they're not going to be able to decide what they want. And when they order something and get it, they're going to complain about it. Why? Because they're already full. You take a person who's starving to death, you can show them a menu. I can assure you they're not going to spend a bunch of time on that menu, but they're going to get anything on there. And when they eat it, they're going to say, thank God I have this food. They're going to be thankful for anything they get because they're hungry. Listen, when we're too full, we complain. And right now, even if you don't have much, you can be too full. Complaints reveal that we're too full. But when you're hungry, you become thankful for what you get. You become emotionally compromised in a good way. You guys see the difference? We've had it so good so long. We don't know what bondage is, what suppression is. People still have the freedom of speech. People have all their rights, and yet we complain about the smallest things concerning rights. But if we were all prisoners of war, and we were set loose from a jail but weren't allowed to speak, all of us would be thankful. I guarantee you we would have no complaints. We have been free a long time. We're a generation that's been born into this freedom and luxuries that nobody... Why do you think so many people are trying to get to the U.S.? You were not born in some of these places that are oppressed. Those people that are from these oppressed places, you know what they do? They look at them. I've heard them. They look at Americans and they say, how spoiled are they? They have everything and they take it for granted. They have freedom. They can speak about anything and they use their voices to complain. Can you imagine what would happen if all the saints never complained again, but handled the business of the kingdom in the earth? My goodness, everything would change. And indeed, wait a minute, I read in the Bible that's exactly what's going to happen. It'll be the saints that go out and possess the kingdoms of this earth. And they'll be about their Father's business. And they won't have a complaint in their mouth, but great things. And when they have that great things, they're not going to put up with the funny business, but will purge evil wherever they find it. The ways of the Lord will be instilled in all places in this earth. That will last for 1,000 years. And after that 1,000 years is complete, Satan is going to be loosed from his prison. Go out and deceive the nations of the earth, again, the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog. They'll be gathered together for the great day of battle. And God himself will consume them in judgment. And that will be the end of the end. And eternity will be secure. And everything that did not get placed in eternity will be forever separated from the light. That process will happen. The Lord called us to serve him in that capacity right now. Is the world going to listen to righteousness? Not really. And when they don't listen, we serve as a witness unto them for things that shall surely come. So never worry about those who reject the message. Just make sure you deliver what Jesus asked you to deliver. Don't deliver your message. Deliver his. Carry his gospel. If you have a desire to correct those you don't know, then you also have cruelness in you. You do. Because if you don't correct in love, you're not correcting. You're fault finding. Do you guys see the difference? If I were to ever go to somebody I do not love and correct them, I'm not correcting them. I'm finding fault with them. I'm embarrassing them. That's what I'm doing. But if I truly love someone, I'll approach them in love. And when you approach somebody in love, in that atmosphere of love, the Lord gives you exactly what to say. And it's not rebuked like you think, but is indeed received. There's the difference. When you're outside of a relationship with an individual, you have no business intruding upon their lives, saying anything, because what you'll do is provoke them. You'll provoke them, and that causes a lot of pain within the church. How many of you have had pain from the church? Let's be truthful. How many were hurt by the church? How many were hurt by the people in the church? Excuse me. Because a real church will never do that. But you have elements within the church who will hurt people. How many do you know who have exercised their righteousness above yours in anger and in cruelty? But then again, how many of you have had somebody come to you in love and say, hey, that's not the way. That's not what the Lord gave us. What are you doing? What you're doing will lead to death. To tell someone something like that for them to receive it, right? Because when you correct somebody, what are you correcting them for? Or don't we correct people so they can live? Don't we correct people so they can get it right? You go to someone you're not in relationship with, you're going to provoke them. You're doing it for yourselves. You're doing it because you say somebody needs to say something to them, so it ought to be me. That's not going to somebody in love. That's going to somebody in self. And that only causes confusion. When you go to someone in love, in that atmosphere of love, you have to be in a relationship. You have to have a relationship established already. You have to know the person. And when you know the person, you know if they'll receive or won't receive. And the Lord will direct you and guide you. And if you say something to them, you do so for their sakes, not for yours. See, when you go to somebody in love, you go to somebody for their sakes, not for yours. You're not going there to get something off your chest. You're going there so they can be lifted up, so they can be corrected, so they make it. And there's a difference in that. When you speak to someone, correct someone, rebuke someone, do it so that they can be saved, so that they can be edified and lifted up, so that they will not die. Don't do it because you're angry. Because if you're angry and go to someone, you're doing it for yourselves. And that's what Satan does. That's why he's the accuser of the brethren. Listen to me. There's a fine line between accusation and a rebuke. Do you guys understand that? Satan is the accuser of the brethren, so he calls out faults. He sees. That's what Satan does. The Father works within the realm of grace and mercy to us, not hatred and anger, and so gently. He suffers our ignorance, our rebellion, He suffers us, the things we do. But listen, here's a beautiful scripture. He stands at the door and he knocks. No matter what you do, he's still standing there and he's knocking. No matter what you have said, he stands there and he knocks. He's not there to insult you, to point out everything you're doing wrong. He simply says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. People are telling you that he died for you. That's all. You see, that message is very simple. He informs us humanity has fallen a long time ago, and he came to give his life so that no matter what we have done in this world, we can be forgiven and can go all the way home. What a beautiful message. Those of you who have been abused, there's bitterness in you. Normally there's bitterness there, and that bitterness comes out when you see things that echo or mirror what you've gone through. You can see traits of things, and instantly in your heart you're going to want revenge. I'm telling you, that's not the way. Listen, if you're at COT and you've been abused, you're here for the sake of repair, establishment in Christ, and a relationship with Christ, not for anything else. I don't go off in the subjects of who did what, where wrong. I'm not interested in what people do wrong. The Lord will raise his own children. If we're children of the Lord, then is he not responsible for raising us? He surely is, because he's going to present to himself a church without spot or wrinkle. What happens is people have that root of bitterness, and they want people to pay for what they have done. They want others to know what another person has done. That's an accuser of the brethren. Listen to me. If you continue on that path, your life will never escalate. You'll never be free. Not ever. Satan has corrupted the ways of love in your life by abuse in your youth and other things. Time to understand that, come to terms with that. Time to acknowledge, Lord, I don't know what love is, and then fully adopt his way. He'll open your eyes to it. That's when your repair comes. And when the repair comes, everybody will see it. Everybody will know it, and it will be a day of rejoicing. But don't live in your pain, because to live in your pain is to agree with Satan's accusation even of you. No one destroyed you. Listen to me carefully. Anything that happened to you happened to your flesh. No one has touched your soul, only your flesh. And you are not your flesh. It doesn't matter what your flesh looks like. You are not your flesh. That's not who you are. You're who God sent you here to be. You are predestined. It's time to stop listening to Satan. Satan will tell you you are the sum total of what you see in the mirror. That is not what you are at all. That's not even your identity. That is the old you. That is not the true you. That's a shell, like a rental car. You can always change rental cars. Just because you're driving a car, that car does not tell everybody who you are. And that car is certainly not you, because you can always change vehicles. Everything that's happened to you on this earth has happened to your body, not to your soul. You know how I know that? Because the Father said so. Because it's forbidden. That fight is over, and you can stand victorious. Somebody says, how do you tell family members that? You've got to go to them with absolute listen. To cultivate an atmosphere of love is to seek Jesus Christ and his righteousness. You've got to sit down beside Christ by way of your reading, meditation, and prayer. You've got to seek him for the solution that you're looking for. That's how it comes. He will lead and guide you step by step. Listen, those steps may not all at once, but it's a process. And his process is perfect and beautiful, and it does perform, and it never blows up in your face. It will never blow up in your face. Never do it by your time, but wait upon the Lord for his instruction. In the meanwhile, every step of the way, every moment you can, spend your time with the Lord. You do that by reading and see what the Lord did with his disciples. See the Lord's walk. See the love he expressed to all, why he said what he said. And I tell you, you'll find the ways of love in the walk of Jesus Christ. I've noticed all those people in the Word of God that people counted out and they kicked to the side. Jesus lifted up and healed. When they gave up on people, Jesus said, not so. It's not over. See, the first thing Jesus will teach you is that man's words, which are the words of flesh and what is obvious, is not the truth. The truth is the unseen. See, when that little girl, when everybody said she was dead, scientifically she was dead. To the eyes, she was dead, but it was not the truth. When Lazarus was in the tomb, he was dead, but Jesus said not so. So what I'm telling you is that Jesus has the truth. It's not science or what your eyes see. It is what the Lord decrees. That is the truth. And that's what we have to understand. The truth cannot be obtained by the evidence we have gathered unto ourselves. The truth is obtained by revelation of God through Jesus Christ directly to us. That's the truth. You cannot trust what you hear and see, but you can trust the words of Jesus Christ. But it can only be understood spiritually for those who believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for the remission of sins. If you believe that, you're truly one of his. You accept that upon yourselves. You accept that sacrifice just for your life. Listen, not for everybody else's life. There are too many people that are around who believe that Jesus died on the cross, but they can't see how he died for them. You got to change that. Time for you to look at that cross and say, yep, he died for me. Specifically for you. Long before you came, he had you in mind. He knew you were coming. He made a way for you. He already knew about the abuse and what Satan would be able to do. And I'm telling you, that's a breaking in your life. You don't know the blessing in your life yet because all you see is trauma. And I tell you that trauma breaks the flesh so that the spirit may be free. And that's a blessing, not a curse. How many of us would have been wrapped up in some flesh thing, unable to escape? How many times have you seen those in the world who swear on the human body and are trying to keep it youthful? Why? Because the flesh has never been broken. But the Lord broke yours. He broke your flesh. And when it broke, you couldn't brag on it. When it broke, you couldn't trust it. You certainly don't trust somebody else's. And because of that, the spiritual things still remain clean to you. So then grab hold of them and become what you've been predestined to be. You've been broken for a reason. That's called a high purpose, not a low purpose. Folks, I hope this conversation helps somebody. God bless each and every one of you. It's always an honor and a pleasure. You guys hang in there and go further. And remember, you most certainly are not your flesh. You're exactly what Jesus sent you here to be. Jesus is the Word of God made flesh and dwelt among men. It's by the Word you're here. By the will of God you're here. That's why you're here. You're purposed to be here. So don't think of yourselves as a mistake. Now it's time to cast off the carnal mind, to begin to accept all truth from the Lord and have the mind of Christ. God bless and keep all of you always. I'll see you guys next time.